Hey everybody, and welcome back to Giant Talk, the world's first OKR podcast. So once again, I'm joined by Brett Knowles from PM Squared Consulting. Hi,
Hey.
Brett.
Hey, how you doing?
And this is the second podcast in our little mini series of 3, all about FOG's behavior change model and how you can utilize the theories behind it to help you implement OKRs better, faster, cheaper, and overall better, really. So I think it'd really help, Brett, if it's okay with you, if you could just give us a really quick recap of what we discussed on the last podcast.
Sure. So BJ Fogg has developed a bunch of logic and frameworks around how we help organizations change. Many people think OKRs are a change activity inside the organization. And so we've learned that his model actually helps us manage change in organizations effectively who are moving towards OKRs. His model basically is the standard horizontal vertical axis model of, on the horizontal axis, he talks about the organization's ability, and the vertical axis is motivation. So if I'm in the top right corner of that matrix with high motivation, high ability, implementing OKRs is slam dunk easy. Mm-hmm. If I'm in the bottom left corner, low motivation, low ability, you're going to have to insert an awful lot of energy to go make the OKRs successful.
Sure.
Last time we spent some time talking about motivators, and on the motivators, that vertical axis on the left really has 2 components, external and internal. External motivators are what comes to you from the boss and the outside world.
Okay.
Altogether, not all that motivating. That we've got this expression in North America that says that the carrot and the whip are meant for the ass in the middle. If we're trying to motivate employees with either financial or other rewards, or the cattle prod because they're not performing, the carrot and the whip, we're treating them like the ass in the middle. So there's external motivators that we need to manage, and intrinsic. Intrinsic are the motivators you give yourself that would encourage you to be happy at work, but also happy at a sport, happy, in music, happy in life. And there's 5 intrinsic motivators. They are purpose, mastery, progress, autonomy, and socialization. And if we can get those intrinsic motivators going, OKRs will be hugely successful. If we link it up with correct extrinsic motivators, it's easy peasy on the motivation side.
Okay, right. I think that's a good recap. I hope that if anybody is tuning into this podcast now and hasn't listened to the first one, please do pause this one here and go back to and listen to the first one, because it really will help to set the scene. But we ended the last one, Brett, with a very interesting analysis of your golf game. And you gave us a little metaphor there of where the 2 behind motivation and ability combine. And I think now really it's time to move on to that ability section. So what do we mean by ability then?
Well, you can't leave readers dangling that forget that great story, right? The idea is I can be hugely motivated to play golf, but have no ability. I'm still going to go out there and play golf, and maybe gradually my ability will increase. But I have awesome ability and no motivation, I'm not going to go out there and play golf. So you got to solve the motivation thing first, then move on to ability.
Okay.
So academically, the things that we think about on ability, I should say non-academically to begin with. If you think of OKRs, on the ability, you think the ability to track measures, the ability to use facts and data to inform decision making, and a whole bunch of numeracy related things. But I want to broaden the scope. I want to say that the ability factors include time, right? If your organization doesn't have the time to give you to help implement OKRs, then you don't have that ability.
Right.
Money. It does take money to set up OKRs. I don't think it's an awful lot, but you still have to get software and do stuff like that. You may have to begin collecting new data. So again, if I don't have the money to finance the project, again, lower ability.
Sure.
We need brain cycles. We need people to stop for a minute and think about their business. And that becomes, in fact, the biggest ability constraint, that we don't have the ability or time with our brains to go fix it. We had one client who said, "Hey, Brett, I'm so busy bailing, I don't have time to turn off the tap."
Right.
We need to stop, think about, what does success look like? What are our objectives?
Yeah.
As measured by, what would the key results be? And that just takes some brain cycles. I don't think it's long. For most of our clients, it's a week, right? We start on Monday. By Friday, we have the operational OKR system, because the knowledge is there. We just have to give people the space and to use their brain cycles to solve, the overall issue.
Sure.
And then maybe second, but maybe even first, the last ability is this ability to put in a new routine, that there is a cadence of accountability that goes along with OKRs. And there's a structure that we need to put in place. We need to have those performance conversations. We need to structure those in a way that's effective. So those are the broad categories, and perhaps we should drill into each one of them to a certain extent.
I think we should. Yeah. I mean, let's kick off with time, I suppose. You suggest that it's a short period of time. The way both of us work as consultants is to get it done in a week, to get them to a point of OKR operation. But I would kick back at that a little bit and say that people do have to accept that this is going to take a little bit of time to embed into company culture, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And so there's two elements of time. One is the actual, what I call touch time, the amount of time you have to spend thinking about and building your OKR solution.
Yeah.
And there's a second, which is what I call fermentation time or lapse time, right? So once you've got all the really good grapes into a barrel, I now need them to ferment. And it turns out that I can't, by putting it into 5 barrels, it doesn't get done 5 times as fast, right? It still takes a certain chunk of time. Mm-hmm. And we always say to our organizations that it takes about 3 quarters or 3 complete OKR cycles before you've got to like an 80 or 90% answer. You'll never get to 100%, but it's amazing how we've dealt with organizations. We did one a little while ago. They'd been around for about 250 years, and they still had no clue what success looked like. Right. And you go, God, how could you be around for so long and still not have sussed it? But they haven't. So you just have to cut yourself the slack. I call it a stay-home free card. I need to be able to be bulletproof for 3 quarters so I can sort things out before it really gets into the blood flow of the organization.
Mm-hmm. And the touch time that you mentioned at the beginning there, then I'm sure you get from time to time the same response that we get from clients of we actually don't have the time to dedicate to do the touch time part, the initial 5 days or 3 days, however long it's going to be. Time is a finite thing, I suppose. We're not here doing a physics podcast, so we won't get too much into that. But what would you suggest to the companies who really don't think they have the time to kick this off?
Well, I would say do the math. So if you think about it for a second, let's say when you're first starting up your OKR solution, it's going to take you a full week. So it's going to consume 30 hours. So put that as the numerator. The denominator is the amount of time available to work in any given year. So typically that's about 17,500 hours. So if you take 30 and divide it by 17,500, that becomes a pretty low number. Would you dedicate 2% of your year in order to make sure the other 98% was productive?
I certainly would.
Yeah, like take your time with this. Don't want to rush you through it. Now, on a quarterly basis, it takes you about 5 hours to help manage 530 hours. Again, do the math. Yeah. So it looks like it's consuming time, but if I get even a 1% performance boost, it pays me back. Yeah. What we do know is we get a 20% performance boost on average. So Yeah, it's tough. You're a young bloke. You don't remember the good old days. The good old days when we didn't have airbags and crumple zones and seat belts and stuff. And when they began adding that stuff onto automobiles, everyone went, well, gosh, we've survived all this time without having that stuff. That's a waste of money. Like, why would I have all that extra weight and gas consumption and stuff to drag along a bunch of safety gear that I just don't need?
Right.
Well, yes, your organization has survived for 250 years without these things. Awesome. Aren't you lucky? But maybe we need to add that extra structure in. The other part is this. The other part is, back when I started consulting back in 1982, we used to do 5-year plans for our clients. I can't imagine doing a 5-year plan anymore. The uncertainty that we used to have out 5 years, I now have out 1 year. So my old 5-year plan is now my 1-year plan. My old 1-year plan is now my 1-quarter plan. So that time I'm putting in once a quarter is the time I used to put in once a year. And I do know if I don't put it in, all my competitors are, and they're going to beat me to the race. They're going to be more agile in the marketplace. So yes, it does consume time, but it gives you back way more time.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I would say if there are people out there that still have their doubts, give me an area or a function or a department to work on and prove to you the impact this has. And, if not an area, a team. And I think people will start to see just how exponential the growth can be, right?
Yeah. Now, there aren't many funny jokes about consultants, but if there were one, it would be around, the idea that, consultants come in, they take your work, change the font, and then feed it back to you.
Yeah.
The reason this doesn't take a long chunk of time is we're just taking the client's existing work. We're taking their existing strategy and translating that into action through OKRs. We're taking their existing processes and linking those objectives to it. We're taking their existing metrics and using them as key results. So the reason that you can do this so quickly, Lawrence, is because the organization spent 5 years putting the bits and bobs in place. They just haven't joined them together. So the time is not that significant compared to the time they've already invested. The dilemma is they're right at the goal line and someone just needs to tap it over the line. And that's what your job is.
Completely. And if at the very worst instance, the strategy isn't well documented, it's usually already in somebody's head. And it's just a matter of kind of getting it out of that head and into a strategy map and things, right?
Sure. I call it a 2-beer exercise. You can take any entrepreneur down. You could use coffee as well as a find and replace equation, but it's not a long journey. We just need to suck out of their brain, what does success look like? Yeah. Now, for many of our clients, they say, I get it, I agree, but we need the leadership team to own it. So we typically run a 2-day workshop in that situation to help the leadership team take ownership of what's in the executive's brain. But this isn't the old traditional, let's do a SWOT and PERT and God knows whatever else. It's more about, let's have a conversation about what are our top 10 priorities. And then let's weight those top 10 priorities so that it adds up to 100% of our strategy. And then let's link our existing budgets to each of those objectives. So it isn't a long, painful, traditional strategy, but it's about getting out of the entrepreneur's head into the team's head. And then you can take the next step of building OKRs.
Yeah. Cool. So that's time well covered, I think. Let's talk about money.
Well, so the money part obviously is there's incremental expense because you're doing something that hasn't been done before. And that money might be just buying donuts and bagels to feed the team while they go through that 1-week workshop. It might be Lawrence paying your exorbitant rates as an external consultant. Or
no comment.
no, but the joke there is if the organization has the internal ability to go do this, then go do it yourself. You don't need an external force if you've got the right motivation and ability in place already. If you don't, then it's going to be extra money. But trust me, spending the money on Lawrence is money well spent.
It's a good investment, right?
That's what I meant to say.
Koan is a purpose-built solution for managing your OKRs. Helps your team achieve their objectives and key results, helps them get aligned, and it helps them stay engaged. Shared spreadsheets simply don't scale when you're using OKRs properly, and you're not going to have a maximum impact with them. But with Koan, you can scale your OKRs right across your entire company, keeping your team super motivated and moving everybody in the right direction. Roger, what's one of your favourite features about Koan?
So the thing that I really love about Koan, and have done ever since I first saw it, was how it really puts the conversation around OKRs at the heart of the system, and it really helps stimulate that, which obviously brings really good collaboration. You know, they've got this reflections feature which helps individuals really prepare for the team conversation which is going to come up, where the collaboration is going to take place. So that would definitely be the thing for me, which is the killer feature of the system.
It's a bit like leasing a car, not buying one. So if you begin to use one of these tools and you don't like it, swap it out, go for the other one. So the idea is it's incremental money. It gives you big payback, whether I'm talking about the software, the bagels, or the consultant. But there is a certain amount of money involved in this. And we haven't seen many failures, but we have seen some failures where the organization didn't allocate the appropriate resources to ensure success. The biggest fault often is not getting the enabling software. You cannot do this on spreadsheets and Post-it notes. There are too many bits and bobs, too many bits at play, and we all need to see what everyone is doing. Like any other team sport, you can't play football. If I'm playing forwards and I can't see what midfield is doing, I'm going to lose. I need to be able to see the entire team. So I can't emphasize enough on the money side, you need the enabling technology.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's people end up with a whole myriad of SaaS platforms that they're using in the business. And one of the kickbacks we often get is, oh God, not another one. But actually, I've seen people use OKR software to such a high impact that they've often been able to turn off and unsubscribe to 2, 3, or even 4 of the other pieces of software that they were using before, because it all becomes about that prioritization and what's having the highest impact, right? Yeah,
I mean, you're right. There's an ecology, and we both have a dog in the fight. We believe OKRs solve all evil, but but I think people are using the wrong logic. Like, think of your cell phone. Do you ever think twice about adding another app onto your cell phone? And when you add that app on, how often do you call the help desk to help explain how to go use it?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, this isn't my generation software. This is different stuff. Any of these applications, you can figure out how to go use it over top of 1 cup of coffee, or as I said before, 1 beer. The idea, they're not complicated. And here's the thing. Here's the equation that you've got to get. Pay attention. This part's on the snap quiz later. If it takes more time for the employee to feed the OKR system than the benefit they get back, it will fail. So if it takes me an hour, to exaggerate things, to update my OKRs, and I only get back 10 minutes of benefit, or the only benefit I get is my boss comes back and beats me up sooner, it's going to fall apart. But if the opposite happens, let's say it takes you 10 minutes to update your OKR, but I get back an hour, that sucker will live forever, right? It is a positive payback to the employee. So the idea is we need to make sure that it's a fair deal. This gives the employee back more than it consumes.
Yeah, completely agree. And, one of the big areas that I've seen that start to happen in is when managers, team leaders, head of departments, whatever, traditionally, and I still see it happening, which blows my mind, they will put together a slide deck or something to present the progress of the department over the last quarter or the last month or whatever, when they have to go to a board meeting style thing. Now you can just pretty much scroll through the OKR system, right? So you're already saving hours there.
Yes, you should never, ever, 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 and if I didn't say it before, ever, have a show and tell meeting. I should never show up in a meeting where either someone's presenting me information for the first time or someone's trying to boast about the work that they've done. This is not grade school. This is not show and tell. Imagine this. Imagine if before every single meeting, we had a chance to see how the whole organization is performing. Not only that, I can see their analysis, right? We use 3 questions. What, so what, now what? So what happened? So what? What's the implication if it continues? Now what? What am I recommending? So now I see red, yellow, green. I see the what, so what, now what, and I can answer for myself 2 questions: impacted on and impacted by. Impact on is, what did I do that impacted on that performance? And impacted by is, given that performance, how is my area impacted by it? So if IT is late on delivering their solution, I'm impacted on that by needing to have more temporary staff to fill in until it comes live, etc. So now when I show up to the meeting, I know everything about the organization, and I've talked to my colleagues, maybe I've had a team meeting, we've processed it. Now that meeting is hugely different. It's no longer show and tell. But wait, there's more. What if the leader took a look at that overall OKR and allocated time for each problem? Hey, Lawrence, this is a 5-minute problem. We're going to just time 5 minutes and then move on. This one over here, that's a big one. That's a 20-minute problem, and I want a 10-minute presentation from this SME. So now when the meeting comes in, it's completely orchestrated. And when it comes up to 5 minutes, if we haven't solved the problem, call timeout. Because if I can't solve it, it means either I don't have the authority or control in the room, or I don't have the knowledge. Either way, debating it longer is not going to make that knowledge appear, or the authority or the control. Timeout. Punt it to another meeting where I've got the right people, the right authority, the right time to go deal with it. So
Absolutely.
In this way, the meetings become way more effective. Now, I know I've snuck into sort of the 5th ability, which is about getting these routine performances, behaviors. So think of church. Church happens every week, the same day, at the same time. And it begins whether you happen to show up or not. What if we ran the performance meeting the same way? We now have read the information in advance. We know what the timing is, and we know it's going to go forward every Tuesday at 3. That's just how this company rolls. We can all adapt around it. So now we have a new ability. We have the ability to run an effective meeting and the ability to know the cadence of this business and where I need to be when.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and this is kind of taking us into reducing what I think the third one you mentioned of these ability factors is physical effort, because already this has got to be starting to reduce physical effort across the organization, right?
Well, you know what, Lawrence, I kind of cheated. I dropped out physical effort, and I also dropped out social deviance. But you're right; those are 2 other abilities. Physical effort is just the amount of energy it takes to run the business. So if we can run the business with less resources being consumed in management cycles, like, for example, getting together that deck of slides you described for an all-hands meeting, yay. The social deviance is the bad behavior we see as people sabotage management practices because it usurps their authority, or they don't like it, or whatever the other issue is. So, that's part of a cultural attribute of the organization, but it's also an ability, right? How can we agree this is how we run the business? I always think of like square dancing or ballroom dancing. There are rules that you need to follow to avoid stepping on your partner's toes. Right. You have to agree to those rules. And if you do, man, you can have a pile of fun. But if you don't, there's a whole bunch of conflict. Don't tell my wife I said that, but it just, the issue is if we don't live by the rules, bad things happen.
Sure. Okay. So have we covered all of the abilities there?
Well, yes, we have almost, kind of, sort of. The one that we didn't explicitly talk about is brain cycles.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Giving people the space to think, right? Again, we're so busy bailing, we don't have time to turn off the tap. So we need to create a safe space, certainly when you set up the OKRs, but once a quarter, forever afterwards, where we stop working in the business and we think about working on the business. What can we do to make this business perform better? And we spend so much time working in the business that we don't create that space. And it's a different thinking mechanism. Literally go into a different room, sit in a different chair, and have a different facilitator. You can't work in the business and on the business in the same meeting. Best example I can give you is, let's say you're running a weekly performance conversation and someone says, hey, we've got the wrong KR there. I want to change the key result. You do not debate it in the performance meeting. A simple example I always use is, let's say the gas gauge is broken on your car. You can use the odometer instead. You've got 300 kilometers in your car, not a problem. You might have to fill it up more often, but I can keep using the asset. Now, eventually I need to get a better key result. But if I'm in the meeting having a debate about whether I fill up the car or not, don't have a debate about, do I change from the odometer to a gas gauge? If the odometer is what you have going in the meeting, you use the odometer for the entire meeting. Call a different meeting to change the KR, right? You cannot do it in the same meeting. So once a quarter, you need to have that meeting to work on the business, not in the business. Now, I'm going to give you another cheat for free. The cheat on this one is, if someone says they don't like the key result, not a problem, so long as you can give us an alternative.
Yeah.
You can't say, I don't like the odometer and run away. You can say, I don't like the odometer, let's use this other metric instead.
And here's why.
That way, two things happen. One is you encourage the creativity of the organization. Secondly, the KR does not become an excuse or a piñata to hide behind.
Yeah, completely agree.
Now, that had nothing to do with brain cycles, but it was a clever point. So back to brain cycles. It's about giving people the right agenda to stop bailing and turn off the tap.
So let me ask you this question then, because in the article that you wrote that inspired this podcast, you talk about brain cycles and you talk about using less brain cycles. Is that actually the point you want to hammer home, or is it about keeping the brain cycles more finely tuned and more specific to what you're trying to achieve in those brain cycles?
Yeah, precisely. Of course, you're right. The issue is, if you read Michael Hammer, we're only about 3% value added. 97% of our time in the office is not adding value as seen by the customer. What we're trying to do is improve that number. I mean, if we were just 93% non-value added, I would have still doubled the throughput of the organization. So how can I focus our brains on the things that matter, which in this case are creating space to work on the business instead of continually bailing? It's not about thinking harder. It's about using our brains for a better purpose.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're all trying to do by listening to this podcast, isn't it?
Well, either that or entertain ourselves while we get to work.
Yeah, okay. Entertain can mean one of many things, so I think I'll leave that point right there.
Yeah. So those are sort of the ability elements.
Yeah.
And we have to mix the ability and motivation to actually mobilize the business. And I suppose you're going to say that's a segue for the next podcast. That
is a segue for the next podcast, but I find the ability stuff slightly harder to digest than the motivator stuff. And maybe it's just me, maybe everybody listening is perfectly au fait with it. But I was just going to ask, what's the key takeaway here really from the ability side of things that we all need to be striving towards?
So ability is more than, do I have numeracy? Can I find KRs and understand how to manage with facts and data? It's about allocating the time to work on the business, not in the business. It's about recognizing there will be social deviants that I need to snuff out so that we don't have passive resistance behaviors. It's about setting up a routine where we have these meetings every week, fortnight, whatever you need, without fail, and recognizing that there are different types of thinking I need to apply to the problem. So the ability is more than the knee-jerk reaction of numeracy.
And does this all boil down really, Brett, to just simplifying everything that's going on?
I would say that it is. The model is this: because we operate in silos, we need more energy to go from one silo to the next. But if we join them all together, I wouldn't need to be spending that energy. And what we're trying to do with OKRs is show the cross-functional nature of work so that it doesn't take all that energy to run the business. And I'm not busy defending my position. I'm busy defending the value streams that go across the organization.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to say, for everyone listening, at home or on their commutes or wherever, is that they don't have to do all of this at once, right? They don't have to go into work tomorrow morning and implement every single thing that we've said over the past 2 podcasts right away. They can start small and start simple and start to incrementally increase these things as the organization gets better at digesting it, I suppose.
Oh, look at you. Now you're doing the segue for the next podcast. Yeah, the question is, how do we get over that concave line between motivation and ability?
Okay, and that's what we're going to come on to in podcast 3, right?
I'm thinking.
Fantastic. Let's shut ourselves up then before we ruin the next podcast too much. Brett, once again, thank you so much. I'm really excited for the 3rd and final part of the podcast, and we'll move straight on to that. If anyone has any questions, please do get in touch with us for anything to do with motivation, anything to do with ability, and what we can do to help. But until then, have a great week. Thanks for listening, and join us next time. Thanks again, Brett.
Sure. Thank you.